Well, earlier today at the White House, President Trump again blaming this market volatility on the Federal Reserve. Watch.
We have interest rates going up at a clip that's much faster than certainly a lot of people, including myself, would have anticipated. I think the Fed is out of control. I think what they're doing is wrong. I think the Fed is far too stringent, and they're making a mistake, and it's not right. And it's, despite that, we're doing very well, but it's not necessary, in my opinion, and I think I know about it better than they do. I'm not going to fire him. I'm just disappointed at the clip. I think it's far too fast, far too rigid, far too fast.
Joining me now, Fox News political contributor Tammy Bruce. She's also the Independent Women's Voice president, and Rick Ungar with the Pod Complex host. He's with us as well. So, Tammy, President Trump not complaining that rates are going up. He understands the robust economy. Right. You got to put some speed bumps in here and there. He thinks the clip, the pace of it is too fast. And I got to tell you something. I think this is a political winner for him as well, because here you have an unelected bureaucracy that's unaccountable to anyone, that has the ability to wreck a growing economy that's just finally touching millions of Americans.
Yeah, it would if it didn't have any real pushback. Obviously, this is a president who's listened to by everyone. He's making it clear. Even, it's interesting, even at his rallies, you would never normally hear a president with a group of supporters or an event talk about the details of trade and tariffs and the numbers that are involved and what's affecting the economy. That is highly unusual if it's ever really occurred. Even President Reagan didn't go into those details. But as a businessman, President Trump does, because he's also finally in an environment where he isn't controlling everything, right? Where he's responsible for the end result. He's not controlling it like we would in a business, but he wants people to know why things might not be going the way he'd like them to be, but also publicly exposing, if you will, for the American people what he thinks that the Fed is doing, maybe publicly as a result putting some pressure on them.
Is that pressure correct? Wall Street purists, Rick, say presidents shouldn't pressure the Fed.
Well, that's why the Fed was set up as an independent bureau. Look, I mean, I can recall, I know you can recall, President Trump, before he was president, complaining that the Fed was being too slow in raising interest rates. The reality is monetary policy is more of an art than a science. It's hard to get it exactly right. The Fed does have to, at some point, start stepping up these increases. I actually think they've done reasonably well.
Although even by their own measures, there's no signs of inflation.
No,
right?
there's not.
Even today, we had a benign inflation rate. Now, this isn't the first time, right, that a president has been upset with the Federal Reserve. Maybe Trump is taking a lesson from President George H.W. Bush, who waited until after he was out of office. But this is what he said. I think if interest rates had been lowered more dramatically, that I would have been reelected president, because the recovery that we were in would have been more visible. He blamed Alan Greenspan for him not being reelected.
Remember, there's two ways to look at this. I'm not going to sit here and tell you which one is right, but there's two ways to look at it. We're still seeing a very controlled inflation. But could that be because of the way the Fed has gone about raising the interest rates? So they may deserve the credit, or conversely, they may deserve some blame if they're going too quickly.
Let's remember why President Trump was elected. It's because we also had gone through a horrible economic turn. Barack Obama inherited effectively a controlled, almost a depression, and was able to manipulate that to get through what he wanted to get through. What we learned in that period of time between W. Bush and Obama was that the government isn't necessarily doing the right things, isn't necessarily having our interests at mind. So the president is looking at the Fed and all of these masters of the universe, and we know that the president has been correct and has been successful, and maybe this is the time for his expertise, his understanding of this to be an influence on the Fed, because up to this point, the American people were still recovering. We're simply thrilled we have a job now. So I think pushing off what President Trump is saying versus what the Fed wants to do is not necessarily the best point of view here.
But the president's expertise, let us remember, is in real estate, which he is a great expert in, not the market.
Which is interest rate sensitive.
And
I mean, he's paid attention to the Fed more than anyone else.
But if there's one thing that a real estate developer hates, it's rising interest rates. So, you know, you have to kind of...
And on that point, the weakest parts of our economy right now? Housing.
Yes.
So why would we want higher rates when housing is
Very
the
good
epicenter
argument.
of the American dream? Maybe President Trump sees this because I think beneath the surface there are certain elements to this economy that aren't being reflected in this in the stock market, that are belying the stock market rally, that probably need a little bit more help.
The president, of course, is a businessman. Right. When he was in business, was going to think of himself and his own business. Now the business is the American people in this country. He sees the entire spectrum, and he's acting accordingly.
Thank you both very much.